This is an example application that shows how you can use the retail 454 fiscal calendar on procurement requests. Up above here, we've got a bunch of contact records. And in each one of these, if you look inside here, there's a date that we're pivoting on, and that's the contract executed date. So when we create this record, we need to be able to bump it up against that 454 retail calendar and find out which week it actually is, which month it is, because October may not be October, and what the fiscal year is. So let's take a look at what happens. The very first thing that happens is it looks at this date to try to figure out what the fiscal year is. So I'm going to right click this over here. I'm going to edit this. You can see there's a formula in here that says if it falls within these date ranges, it's definitely part of the 2018, the 19, the 20, or the 21 fiscal years. That's the beginning. Now, why are we grabbing that at that moment? Well, we need to be able to go up. This is where all the fiscal years are stored. And if I look at the 2018 year here, I've got which year it is, when it actually starts and ends. And down below here, every single week is loaded to know which month it relates to, when it starts, where it ends. So all of those come right down to the bottom. So what we do is we calculate out what the fiscal year is and then ask a QuickBase automation to wake up and take the fiscal year, go over here, give it the identity of the date and which project it is, let it be calculated here, and then an automation, once it's calculated, wakes up and brings that information back and updates those respective fields. And that's why when you look here, you've got the actual fiscal week and you have the fiscal month here. Let's see. This is record number 3. I'm going to edit this just to give you an idea of what's going to happen. So this is 10. I'm going to put this to 6 instead of 10. And we're going to, and this will change from 37. All right, so let's refresh this page here, and we come down here, and you can see it's 19 now, and it's in June. So I'm going to flip this back to 10, and it'll revert back as well. And we'll save it. Now, there's a lot of things that are happening in the background. We know what the record ID is, and we know which year we're going to have to update. So the automation, and I'll show you the automation so you got a handle on what that is. We'll come down here to this automation. The first one takes the information that we know about, tells the fiscal year you want them to calculate. Let's go into that for a second. So this piece of automation says whenever a record is added and modified to the, and it's going to say the projects table, but only if the contract's executed date has had a change happen to it. We want it to modify records and find the record in that fiscal years where the year is equal to the fiscal year, because this is the value that we're sending up. This is the year locally in that table. And when we find it, find the field that is the executed date and fill that in, and also tell it which record ID of the project it is that's making that request. The reason we're passing this breadcrumb up to that is because we've got another automation, and I'm going to cancel out of this here. We have another automation which goes back and updates it back into the project. And so whenever a record is either added or modified, but only when fiscal year happens and only when the requesting's contract's executed date has changed. That means it's been updated locally. What it wants to do is go back to the original project. And how does it find that original project? Well, it already knows the record ID because it was passed up to the fiscal year. So if it can find that original record again, what it'll do is say, well, find that field 454 fiscal week and copy the value that's been calculated in the fiscal year table and do the same thing for the month, the week and the month. So that's a quick way of using the 454 calendar and being able to accommodate your date structures. Now, in the end, what you have is a list of projects, and you can come down and you can say, I'd like to see the fiscal year 2018 and all the things that happened in March. And what you got is a combination and an ability to be able to total your transactions based upon the 454 calendar.